It's the start of Holy Week, and we start this week out by observing Palm Sunday. And this is the Sunday that we look at each and every single year and celebrate Jesus' triumphant entrance, his triumphal entrance into Jerusalem. Now, this is a major point in Jesus' ministry, and in the narrative of Matthew especially. Up to this point in Matthew, whenever Jesus would do something that would tie him to the prophecies of the Messiah, he would tell his followers, his disciples, not to say anything. This is known as the messianic secret. It's that he wanted them to keep his miracles, the things that he was doing, a secret. And now, of course, this didn't work out as great because throughout Matthew we see groups coming and wondering if he is the Messiah, and individuals and everything like that. The people around him were not necessarily the greatest. That even the people he helped, who you did also instruct not to tell anybody, they didn't necessarily do the greatest jobs of keeping secrets. But right here at this moment, at the triumphant entrance, Jesus changes what he's doing. He actually takes kind of off the veil of who he is, and he's making a declaration here that anybody who was a Jew living in Israel at that time would recognize as announcing himself as the Messiah. In this verse, we have two verses that are quoted that are prophecies, actually, describing who the Messiah is and how they will enter into Jerusalem. And this triumphant entrance is matching that. And this is why the crowd reacts in the way that they do. They're pulling down palm branches, and they're spreading out their cloaks. They're essentially rolling out a red carpet for Jesus to walk into Jerusalem. And the reason is the mindset of the Jewish people at that time was that the Messiah was going to be political, that they were going to be somebody who would march in and overthrow the oppressors and rise up their nation into being a massive, greater political power in the world of that day. And of course, as we know, that is not what Jesus was sent to do. But at the time, that was really very much the belief, And so this whole procession, we think of it as a holy procession in many ways, but really, it is more of in their minds, a secular procession. It's the literal procession in their mind of the next king of Israel. There's some interesting parallels here between Jesus and King Solomon. King Solomon, when he was crowned king, when he rode into Jerusalem, he rode on a mule. And Jesus, we have here riding in on a donkey, which kind of has some parallels with that. And it's interesting as well because generally, when you were a king and you were going into a city to announce yourself as this way, you wouldn't be riding on a pack animal, an animal that was seen as being very humble and was oftentimes associated with individuals who were poor. And in both cases of Solomon and Jesus, they're showing their humility by doing this. Because generally, a king would ride in on the nicest horse that they could find, because that's the more stately animal. So this entire declaration is Jesus declaring himself as the Messiah, and as is so common throughout his ministry and even to today, people completely mistook what he was doing. They didn't understand what this really truly meant. This is Jesus going into the place where he is going to die, where he was going to be a sacrifice for us to bring us back into connection with God. And this is something that I believe, and I think very clearly weighs on Jesus throughout this entire week, and weighs on him more and more and more as it is going on. And this group that is with him, it's been observed many times that these would have been the same people. Many of them probably the same people who were yelling at the end of the week for Pilate to crucify Jesus. So this triumphant entry, we should always keep it in mind as being tied to Easter. This is a day for celebration. It is a day to celebrate Jesus as a king. And, if you were in service in person, usually we do this with giving out palm leaves and waving them around, and that's to honor this, and it is a day to recognize Jesus as king. But it's important for us to remember that Jesus isn't just a king, he's also the suffering servant. He is that individual who was sent to die for us, to suffer for us, in order to bring us back to connection with God. And this next week, that is what we will be focusing on with Easter. Amen. And now I'd like to invite you all to join me for our last worship song today.